So let me get this right. You found this record just in the record shop, or you knew of it before? What's the story?
Well, I guess what brought your attention to it was I put a post on Blue Sky because I was in Truck Records on the Cowley Road the other day and spotted a rare copy of the Ox CD, which I bought. I've still got the first time around. I was going to dig it out, but it's somewhere in a box of CDs and stuff. But yeah, I just saw it in Truck, and it's a fairly rare item. I think it was only £4.50 as well, which I think if you're an Oxford fan is quite a good deal. It would probably cost you a bit more. It's probably more sentimental value, but I remember it very well because it has a secret track on the CD. It went from something like track 13, and then it skipped all the tracks. It was track 86 was "Sing You Are My Sunshine," which was Arthur Turner's "Lovechild" with sound from Beaker and the Oxford United squad. I still don't know which members of the Oxford United squad, but that was the song I bought the whole CD for. There was lots of songs by local bands on there as well. And so, yeah, that's what I tweeted about. I don't know if anyone, or not tweeted Blue Sky, I'm not tweeting anymore, but yeah, I don't know if anyone subsequently went to buy it or not. I should go back at the weekend and find out, perhaps.
So I'm not sure if I remember this or not. It's like there's something in the back of my mind, like I should remember this song, but I think we're teasing the listener a bit too much here, because I, for one, want to hear a bit of David Rush singing. I, for one, want to hear a bit of Phil Gilchrist singing. Can we take a listen?
Yeah, we can do. I've got it here. I've never played music live on this app before, so let's give it a go. So we don't know who's singing then. I mean, there wasn't a video or anything released?
No, I mean, the details are, I remember bits and pieces. I've looked a little bit up in the last couple of days. There was another band called Beaker, that Sam from Beaker is the singer, the female singer on it, I think. And then the band that wrote it and sang it were Arthur Turner's Lovechild, that were a band who I do remember. They signed their record contract on the Manor Ground, on the pitch at the Manor Ground.
I remember that.
And of course, if they called Arthur Turner's Lovechild, they're going to be Oxford fans.
I want to know, like, I'm just listening, and there was always that one player, wasn't there, who always took it a bit too seriously, like maybe the footballer that maybe thought they were going to be a singer. I mean, obviously Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle really spring to mind, but I think that Tottenham FA Cup song, there's always one who's holding the ears thinking that they're like doing Live Aid or something. I'd love to imagine who that was in that squad.
Well, I mean, I've got a theory. I think, this should be the start of a deep dive sort of series for you, Dan, of going into all your the archives and stuff and all your connections to try and find out some of from the players firsthand. But I think Mike Ford's going to be one that fancies himself as a singer. I think. No doubt. Yeah. Do you remember? This has been talked about on some of the podcasts, I'm sure. But Shooting Stars came to town with Vic and Bob, and they brought up local team captains. Did you remember this, or did you go at all? Or, but basically, they brought in Mike Ford was the guest on the local version of Shooting Stars with Vic and Bob. So, is this two worlds colliding?
Love it.
I don't know if there's any video of it anywhere. I wasn't there. I was at university when it happened, but I remember hearing about it. I had friends who went. I would say I think. I mean, who's the most likely? I would say Mike Ford's out. I wonder if Matt Elliott's up for it as well. Some of the confident ones, maybe. I mean, I can't remember. This was '95, I think, so I don't know which squad you're looking at. But I think you can imagine the players that it probably wasn't, that weren't out at the front singing as well. But it'd be fascinating to find out.
Just on the chat about Oxford songs, I remember ahead of the 1986 final, Oxford released a song which was called My Oh My, right?
That's right.
I think so. And I have this half memory of standing on the beach road and stewards or someone from the club handing out song sheets so then everyone could sing along to the song ahead of the match, to almost send send the side to Wembley and send them on their way. So
Yeah,
if anyone listening has one of those song sheets, let us know.
I love the idea of a song sheet. So I think we could do with a few these days as well for some of the. We need some newer songs, but I remember the song at the time. I don't think I had it. There was one the season after. It was called something like "We Are the Oxford," and I'll find a link to it at some point as well for you. But it wasn't as good as the My Oh My one. I think I've heard that played a few times in the run up to maybe the Johnson's Paint visits to Wembley, and maybe this last one as well. But
you dug out a few times.
It's nice to have some Oxford songs because we don't feel like the sort of big enough club to have any, do we? Really?
Absolutely. Andrew, you're in showbiz. You are Mr. Showbiz. You mix with those crowds. Marks out of 10 for this football record.
I think it's. Well, I'm not going to take. I'm in show. I'm on the edge. I'm on the fringes of the business. But I really like it. I think it's what it is. There was a lot of great music coming out of Oxford at the time. There was, obviously Radiohead had come through and Supergrass and so there was a bit of and Ride obviously and so there was a sort of a time nationally. In the England football, there was New Order and all that, and then Three Lions, and so it was like there was a great national converging of music and football, and then also it was great locally that the local Oxford bands and the team got in on it. So I like this. This is well, I'll give any Oxford song a 10 out of 10 to be honest. So it was just great to feel those two things coming together within the city.
Well, welcome to episode 5 of You Are My Oxford. A slightly different episode today, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, when I was starting out with the idea for this pod, I wanted some episodes where we interviewed former players, and we've obviously done that with Moods. I wanted somewhere where me and you were just chatting about the game, but I also had a hit list of fans that I really, really wanted to get on the pod, people who I follow on Twitter, people who kind of made me laugh, people whose opinions I kind of value. And today's guest was absolutely at the top of my list, just behind Michaela Strachan. He's a comedy writer. He's a friend of the stars. He's, as we've established, he's a CD finder. And most importantly for this pod, he's a huge Oxford fan. Andrew Dawson, welcome. We've never met before. Have I introduced you fairly there, do you think?
Overly so, I would say. Yeah, it's a bit of a high bar. I'd prefer something a little bit less, please. But that's great. Certainly, what's been nice is there's a good community of Oxford fans, isn't there, through Twitter and hopefully moving on to Blue Sky. So we've had conversations and stuff on there. But no, it's a good set of fans online mostly, isn't it, for Oxford?
Well, Andrew, it's great to have you with us. As you probably know, we do a bit of a mix. We do a lot of nostalgia. We also speak about the current team, current affairs, and a bit of everything else. Should we get the horrible stuff out of the way and speak about West Brom? I didn't go. Dan, I believe you went.
I did
Andrew,
go.
I'm not sure if you went. How was it?
No. You tell us, Dan, yeah.
Dreadful, to be honest. I can't really say much more about it. We just didn't ever look like scoring, ever. And that's really bothering me. I haven't really felt like this since, I hate to say, 2005-06, the year we went from the Football League, where we just stopped scoring. Who was it we sold that year? We sold Bradbury and Davis and Chris Hackett. Suddenly all our goal threat just disappeared, and it just felt a little bit like that as well. Just look a little bit devoid of goal scoring ideas, and that bothers me a bit.
Andrew, how are you feeling generally about the season? It's been a bit of a weird one, hasn't it? I mean, I think we all say if you'd said to us we'd have 39 points at this point, you'd go brilliant. But it's kind of, we've been on those runs, and then it's been dour for a time, and you just worry that we're just, we're taking a bit of a dip at the moment. So how overall are you feeling?
Well, I think probably similar to most fans is that the start was a surprise. I thought we'd really struggle. I think to give a bit of perspective to everything, if you look at, we won that playoff final, and the day after Southampton won their one, and if you look how much they're struggling, no one expected them. They had a shortened pre-season. They're really struggling. So the fact we're doing pretty well is great, I think. But I think we've been lulled into a false sense of security a couple of times now at the start of the season and again now. And for me, I was very pro Des. I would have seen him. He could have taken us down to non-league, and I've just stuck with Des. I know that's not necessarily a popular thing, but But it was great when Rowett's come in and fixed the team up and got a lot of players that we weren't getting the best performances out of. He seems to have done a lot there, and I think but I feel like our January transfer window was a little bit complacent. That's one thing I voiced on the socials. I just feel like you see that Scarlett's getting in the Spurs team now, and I think we probably should have tried to play him a bit more and hold on to him, because now we're looking a little bit short. And obviously Jack Curry, I've got a friend who's a Leyton Orient fan that's raving about Jack Curry, and I don't know, I'd be overcautious and have brought him back. But look, I'm not a football manager, they know the ins and outs of it, but I just feel I'm not going to say I don't know where the next goal is going to come from, because you never do you? That's the thing, is if we could stick 3 past Coventry on Saturday and suddenly everything's all right. But it's hard to. I don't know, the sort of the I don't think it was a new manager bounce as such. I think, but certainly the enjoyment of January has sort of gone away now.
How are you feeling about between now and the end of the season? About this really tough running that we've got. How are you looking at it?
I think it's a very big sort of March and early April, because we've got such difficult fixtures at the end. I mean, look, I put up this stat on Blue Sky, which somebody had put this on Twitter. Like, basically, looking at the results, we've mostly beaten the bottom half teams at home. We've got points the bottom half teams away. We've lost to the top teams away, and we've got the odd point against them at home. And we've pretty much played all the bottom half teams at home now. So our best hopes are really sort of QPR. Maybe that's the 3 points, and then there's a lot of draws. And so I think we're going to have to, either get a couple of sort of results that buck the trend. So if we could beat Coventry, that's suddenly it's a lot easier. But I just hope we get points quickly, because otherwise, if we hit April, or if we get that QPR game and we haven't got points, it's going to be a slow finish to the season. It's going to be horrible. I'd love to be enjoying Leeds and Sunderland in those games, knowing we're safe.
Any particular favourite players this year that have stood out for you?
I mean, I love Tyler Goodrum. I remember seeing him pre-season against in one of those Oxford City friendlies when he was probably 16 or 17, and he looked amazing already. And I think him not playing as much and not playing into form. I'm not going to say he's out of form, actually, because I just don't think he's played enough to do it. But I'd love to see him back in, because he was causing problems all over the place against some of the top teams as well. But look, it's hard. There's such a likeable squad. I think there's, the whole no dickheads thing that Appleton has, and clearly Rowett and Buckingham had as well, means we've got a really nice bunch of players. They're all good, and they're all trying, and we're a bottom end championship squad. We will be when you look at Leeds and Sheffield United the other night. It's just it's £130 million difference. So the fact that they're competing quite a lot is amazing. So I'm not going to speak ill of any of them, but you just want them to. I want them to take a few more risks, probably. Yeah. I'm sure Gary Rowett does too.
It's nice to have a likeable squad, isn't it? A kind of a team that you want to get behind, and like you say, everyone's kind of trying, and that's really come across this season, which is really nice. Is it right? Are we right in saying that you're a bit of a Sam Long fan too?
Oh yeah. I mean, I wrote a thing for the Ox Bloggers newsletter, but I mean, there's. Without getting into, I've written an essay about like a personal story that I won't get into here, but I just think he's great. I think he sort of every time. I think there's in this article I basically wrote about how I think we've got an anti-local player bias. I think we always have had. So you look at how Josh Ruffles was referred to. It was because he'd come through I know it was Coventry's youth system, I think, wasn't he? But I think because he was sort of one of our own, everyone gave him or they didn't rate him as highly, and then he goes to Huddersfield and he's in the playoffs in the Championship, next season. And I think Sam Long's sort of the epitome of that. And I don't like to talk about the negativity too much about him, because I don't think there should be. But I think some fans just think because they've seen him grow up and come through the squad, they don't think he could possibly be Championship level. But then you watch him and you go, well, he is. He's playing in Championship team. We're winning with him in the side. I think there's 2 moments in the playoffs that he basically sort of wins it for us. For me, obviously Josh Murphy literally won it for us, but there's the clearance off the line against Peterborough. If he doesn't do that, we don't get to Wembley, I don't think. The tide turns. And I think the second minute of the playoff final, you know, I presume you're both at Wembley. When the team was announced, there were people around me like criticising that Sam Long was in there. They wanted who was the loanee, Finn Stevens of Brentford to play, and were worried about Sam Long in there. But I think Des put him in there for a couple of reasons. I've got a theory. I'll float it anyway. I think Finn Stevens was playing, and it was Paris Magoma was the winger for Bolton, the left winger, and they were both Brentford loanees. Okay, so they would presumably be friends and teammates. Now, you remember that tackle that Sam Long puts in the second minute on Magoma? It sort of almost breaks his ankle. It was a fair tackle, but I don't think Finn Stevens is doing that because it's great. Not nothing against Finn Stevens. None of us would, but what that did is set the tone, and it was right in the corner with the Oxford fans. It was the corner I was at, and I just think at that point on, Bolton knew they had a fight on their hands, and it sort of quite injured Magoma as well. I think it took him out of the game. He's one of their better players in the run-up. So look, for me, every time he gets doubted, he sort of steps up, and I think he's a much more solid Championship player, League One player than people give him credit for. He's also a really nice guy, and he's a one-club man. You know, how many one-club guys have there been? Even some of our past heroes weren't one-club guys. So I just think he's exactly the kind of person you want in the team.
It was Sam Watt won it. Love that.
Yeah, that. I mean, Josh Murphy wouldn't want to hear that, perhaps, and technically it was his goals, but I think he's probably a very good character to have around the place. Even when he's not in the team, I imagine he's the kind of guy that is just, you see him cheering on the sideline. He got a booking the other week, didn't he, for kicking the ball away, wasting time as a sub. So even when he's not playing, he's doing things for the team.
No, but I do agree with that theory about kind of local players, and that maybe we don't kind of big them up as much as possible. Dan, is it now time to look back a bit?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to find out a bit about you, Andrew, to be honest, and how you got involved in supporting Oxford. So give us your starting point. When did you first go and watch Oxford?
So I was born in the John Radcliffe, so like a lot of us, I assume, but so literally looking over the manor. And I grew up in Abingdon, and from a pretty footballing family. And so my dad took me up when I was 5, 1982, to see a Bristol Rovers game, and that was at the manor, and I was hooked basically, and so I started watching them possibly at the best possible time you could ever support a club, a lower league club, in that the first season we were in the third tier, didn't go up. Next season we won it. We won the third tier, in Division 3 then we won Division 2, and then we won the Milk Cup final. And I just thought, football just gets better and better, doesn't it? It's like, the only way is up. And then obviously ever since then it's been down. But
Andrew, I've got a similar story actually, because I started supporting Oxford this season after you first started going. So I'm just like,
literally the best.
Yeah, I know, literally the best. So I was like, oh, this is great. And when people, in our darkest days, as we've all had, supporting Oxford, when people go, why do you support Oxford? It's that moment of going, well, wait a minute, when I first started supporting and all that. But can you remember, did you have a first favourite player in that first season that you were following?
Probably my first favourite player might have been like the second season, but I loved Billy Hamilton. I think sort of I didn't know the 86 World Cup would be the first one I remember really. I was tuned for the 82 one. And so Billy Hamilton was, I think, playing for Northern Ireland. So seeing an Oxford player actually at a World Cup, and it was in Mexico, which is even more sort of exotic, isn't it? So he was just brilliant. And him and obviously Aldridge, everybody loved Aldridge as well. But the pair, there was something about Billy Hamilton that was just a tough character as well, and just very likeable. But he was great. Dave Langan was great as well, and I was there for that Arsenal goal that he scored, that Jennings dropped in. And so that era was, the Jim Smith era. I mean, we were spoiled obviously when Houghton came in as well. I mean, but Hamilton, there's something about Hamilton. I also had, in fact, I might still have some of Billy Hamilton's, the board game, what was it called? Football Academy.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to play that on the next episode, I think.
But Billy Hamilton, just amazing. But David Langan was my favourite player. I just, I stood on the beach road, Andrew. So I could almost touch the guy and see him as he made those overlapping runs. Sometimes he'd get the cross in, sometimes he wouldn't. He'd always, hunch back with that kind of frustrated shrugging of shoulders. And I just used to.
He was a great character, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And also, he was the one that, you probably know this, but he was the one that tapped up Aldridge and Houghton once he found out they had Irish grandparents. He was the one that started that whole thing with Jack Charlton, getting them involved.
I'm not sure I knew that.
Yeah, no, it was him. He basically said, Aldridge is good, and apparently his grandma's Irish. I think this is how it went. So that whole train of Irish grandparents, all the way to Tony Cascarino, who didn't have any Irish relations, did he, in the end? But yeah, so he was the one that started that thing going, I think.
It's a very weird time supporting any football club around then. I'm just going to. You sent us a couple of pictures and so on. This is one of the pictures you sent us first of all. I had one of those also. For those, who weren't around this sort of time, you literally needed one of these in order to get into the ground. It's almost like a kind of membership scheme. Is that right? And that was the season ticket as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was both. I think there was different. I think there was different levels. I think there was a member level and a season ticket level. But to be honest, it's I can't remember. That would, I was young enough that my dad was buying it all, so I don't know the options of like I do these days.
Yeah, I got one. The season we went down from the top division was the first time I bought one. I basically saved up. I did some kind of chores around the house and saved up £25, which is what it cost me. And they sent it in the post. And it was literally like, it's my first kind of credit card almost, it looked like. I remember putting it in my wallet and thinking I was incredibly mature. But yeah, such a strange time to be a football fan. There was trouble on the terraces. There was, generally quite an unpleasant atmosphere. A lot of games. You went with your dad, I guess.
Yes, I mixed between the early days was mostly London Road, and this tells you how different it was. But when I first went, it was pre the fences going up, pre Heysel and stuff. And he built like a wooden stand because I was too small to look over the wall. So he built like a little concertina wooden thing with a platform that I could stand on, and he'd carry it in the ground. So you'd never be allowed in now, but he would yes, we'd put that in and stand up behind the wall in the London Road, and then I feels like I don't know the facts, but it feels like after that, after Heysel, immediately as we went back, suddenly the London Road was just a cage. It was just the fencing all the way up, and the same with the Cuckoo Lane at the other end. And then obviously after Hillsborough, it sort of came down as quickly as it went up. But it wasn't. Yeah, look, it wasn't pleasant. There was a lot of fighting. I think because I was young and I was with my dad, people tended not to get families involved and stuff. But it wasn't anything like the current experience, was it? And I think even until the mid-90s, it was not as pleasant and stuff. And when Leeds were in town or Millwall were in town, it was not a fun place to be around Headington, really. But I was also in the beach. Then later on, I moved to the beach road, but to the left of the dugouts and stuff. So if you were on the standing bit, were you, Matt? The
correct,
bit?
Yeah. So just the open bit, and if you came up the stairs,
I
just walked down a few steps and just to the right there. I can almost see it now. Yeah.
So there was a little seating area just to the left of the dugout. So often I'd see the substitute. Well, it'd be one substitute those days, but you'd see them come in. We'd just be behind the away dugout. And not wishing to get ahead on the cues, Dan, but I've got a picture of Paul Simpson celebrating a goal with me and my dad. It's the black and white one. We got it out. It was in the Oxford Mail one day. I don't know if you've got that to hand. There it is. So
I used to love Simo.
Yeah, he was great. So that's me in the black and white coat in the middle. They were sort of badly punching the air like that, and then my dad.
I know exactly where you were now. Yeah.
And look, the kid next to my dad. I don't know who that is, but I haven't brought many props with it, but he's got one of the original. That's an 86 one. It isn't the yellow.
That.
The Malcolm
is that an original? Sorry,
this is the original. Yeah, this is 86. Wow. It's just about holding up. But do you remember Malcolm Shotton had the yellow with the blue horns? This was the same one, but blue. Yeah. So
right. So yours is more limited edition.
The Jim Rosenthal hat, we call it. Yeah.
That's it. But it was a biased Jim Rosenthal, wasn't it? It was. That doesn't often happen, does it? Even that an anchor on a football show is so blatantly biased for a team, but Rosenthal wasn't.
Any other favourite games at all? Just quickly.
Well, this is the Milk Cup final. So that's me on the left, And there's my brother next to me, Steve, who's my writing partner, or one of my writing partners now for the Dawson Brothers as we write. And he didn't like football at all, but he came along for that one. And my mum and my grandpa is the older guy. He played them for Burton Albion in the 30s, and was scouted by Wolves when he was 19. And was about to sign for Wolves, and then war broke out, and that was it. That was his football career. So
Wow.
it was, and he served in the army for 6 years, and then came back. By which time he was too old to play professional football and stuff. So but that was his first. Well, I can give you a little story about that. Actually, so he was massively into football, but he'd never. He was different era, and he'd never been to Wembley, and so he was of that generation. He was born 1920, so he'd never been to Wembley, even though he loved football, and my dad got him an extra ticket when we got our tickets for the Milk Cup final. We got him a ticket as well. And when we were at their house and gave it to him, he got so emotional he had to leave the room. And you could see him through the glass door, like crying because he was going to get to Wembley, which I know sounds easy now, doesn't it, to go to Wembley? But at that time, I just don't think everyone had ever taken him or he'd ever thought he could get there. So that was an extra special day, yes. And obviously then, like the Milk Cup final was... it was weirdly easy. I mean, I was only 9, so I don't.
Can you remember it?
Well, I think the difficult thing is I've watched it back so many times. I don't know what I actually remember and what I remember from the TV. But I remember it feeling weirdly comfortable, as those whole seasons did, Matt, as you'd have had even more than me. Is just Oxford kept winning, and because it was not only we got promoted twice, we won the league twice as well, so it was weirdly comfortable, wasn't it? In the end, and it turned into a bit of a procession. Weirdly, quite like the playoff final with Des, which I watched some footage of the other day, and I still can't quite believe it happened. It was just
I'm the same, though. I watched it the other day.
It's like watching another football club. You go, hometown hero comes in November, has an awful spell, loses 5-0, and then within a month or two, he's taken them to Wembley and gotten promoted for the first time in 25 years, and he's the one leading the celebration. And it's just like, it does feel like, because I don't think any of us were expecting anything of that to happen.
Yeah.
We didn't get the build up, so I still haven't processed it really. But
no, I'm the same. I still haven't processed it. But there's so many things during the day, like just seeing very confident Bolton fans like on the tube and everything on the way up. I'm just thinking they're expecting to win, and then half time, just going back into the concourse, nipping to the loo or whatever, getting a pie or a pint or whatever, and just everyone just beaming and just being such a buzz. It was just lovely.
Well, I think. I mean, we're jumping around a bit, but I think that's partly also what helped us win on the day was you could sense Oxford fans were there for a party. We were just going to, in fact, it was all going to be fun up to kick off, and then it was like, well, we'll see what happens after that. But no one was too hopeful, and particularly because of the 5-0. But Bolton End was quiet. It was tense. They had so much to lose, and we didn't have anything to lose, and it was just a party, and you could sense that in the players as well. They came out and Oxford were loose and just happy, and obviously Des had them very well organised as well. But they just played with a freedom rather than a pressure, and Bolton just looked really uptight and couldn't get started, could they? So yeah, I mean, I still haven't processed. I probably need to watch the whole thing again at some point to do it. I'll watch the highlights, obviously.
Was that your favourite day? I mean, if you had to name a favourite day as an Oxford fan, would that be it?
I think the Milk Cup has to be the biggest one. I don't think I appreciated it anywhere near enough at the time, but it's the one we can hold over a lot of our teams. I've got a lot of Newcastle fans as friends, and Oxford have won a major trophy more recently than Newcastle have. Every time they say we're a bigger club, well, we've won a trophy more recently, and up until a couple of years ago, West Ham as well. So I think we'll never have one like that again. I mean, if I take my favourite days, going up the other last season was amazing. I think probably though the Peterborough 4-0. David Rush with the corner flag, that was a great day, because it sort of felt like we weren't going to get there for a while, and then suddenly it was just a party. And then the Wickham, the minute Che Dunkley heads in. I mean, I'm going for the obvious ones anyway, but there was something about those days that was special because there was a pressure. It wasn't a given, and they sort of delivered, and then it was comfortable by the end. I mean, Conference 1, I know it counted for a lot, but I don't know. It was a good day, but I just I don't know. Maybe I felt too entitled to getting back up or what. But obviously, it was great last few minutes after Potter scores, wasn't it? It was
fantastic. It was fantastic. But maybe we almost expected it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think we all learnt as fans a lot in those 4 years in the conference, because every time I see fans of certain size clubs getting too big for themselves and saying we're too big for this, you sort of go, well, we've done that, we've been there, and for 2 seasons we were like, we'll bounce straight back up. And actually resetting your expectations, that's the foundation of everything that's happened since. Is you don't, when the expectations way too heavy. Look at Luton this season, for example. Everyone expected them to bounce straight back up, and actually the pressure is huge, and it isn't good for the players, I don't think.
God, we have had a lot of good times as Oxford fans, haven't we?
Well, yeah, there's been some bad ones in between, but yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the biggest one for me, but probably the most, I don't know what, impactful time for me was possibly that Leyton Orient game, because I've never cried at an Oxford game except for when Jim Smith came back, and I really thought it was emotional, partly because it was him and coming back, and even though he didn't keep us up, it felt like, you know, at the time we got the club back, and Sam sold it, and you thought, oh, we can start again, and obviously it didn't work out that way, but there was something about, there was a nostalgia of Jim Smith being back, and it was like having your granddad back to go, right, I'm going to fix all this and sort it all out and everything. And then obviously the Leyton Orient game was like, well, this is the end of the club, you know, that it was the horrible the way it went. There was a sending off, an ex-player scoring the goal, and you just thought, well, there's no way back from this. And then as you got close to the start of non-league, it was like, oh, well, fans will turn up. In fact, more turned up, didn't they? And there will still be football on a Saturday. And as long as there is that, I think that sort of took a pressure off everything a little bit. And I sort of realised, I know not everyone thinks like this, but I don't really care what division we're in, as long as the club's still going and fans are still turning up. And better that lower down the league than being higher up and no one's. I looked at Southampton's ground the other day and it was half empty with half an hour to go, and I just thought, what a season they're having. It's horrible to lose every game basically. But yeah, so I think we've known, not many teams have known everything, have they, of winning a trophy. Luton perhaps as well, but have gone all the way down and come back up again. There aren't many that have had the ups and the downs we've had.
I think as well we've had a really interesting, like, you know, whatever it is, 10, 15 years of basically just good seasons. They've been generally really, really good seasons. Like, we've had a couple of bad ones mixed in, but, you know, since coming up to the Football League again, we've generally, you know, been a team that wins more often than not. And I just wonder, you know, if we do stay up this year in the Championship, how many more years of kind of struggling and you know, losing most weeks can we as a fan base put up with before we turn into like a Southampton type scenario where people stop turning up, especially if we have to move to another ground for a season or two?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, an example I sometimes talk about is, you know, when Wigan won the FA Cup and then got relegated. I would rather have a day at Wembley where you win something than you constantly finishing sixth in a season, right? There's sort of like, fans have become almost accountants, and they want to get in the Champions League not to win it, but because it's good for the club finances and all this sort of thing. And I just think it's just about winning things, isn't it? And having great days. Well, above all, it's about great days out, right? Whether that's staying up on the last day of the season or winning trophies, be they the JPT or whatever, or not that we manage that, but or winning in a playoff final. It's about those big days, and I think there's so many clubs in the Premier League that don't have any of those days. You know, they sort of not much to celebrate, and I think I know what you mean, Dan, in that if we become a Bristol City, let's say, for example, who are never really in danger of getting relegated and never seem to get up in the playoffs, it's like what great days have Bristol City had in the last 10 or 15 years? Not as many as we have, I don't think. And it doesn't really matter which division it's in.
Can we chat a bit about your work?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Tell us a bit about it. Tell the listeners a bit about what you do.
Okay, so I'm a writer, mostly a comedy writer. So I've been doing it. I write with my brother Steve and one of our friends we grew up with, Tim, who both. Well, obviously my brother lived with me, but all grew up in Abingdon, and we go under the name of the Dawson Brothers collectively, and we've written on a lot of TV shows and a few films recently, and it's a stand-up and sketch shows stuff over the years. But we were doing it in our spare time. With the origin story, I'll do the quick version, but is that we used to make videos for our mates, basically on camcorders and stuff when we were kids, when we were like 12 or 13, and then we kept doing it as we got older. And Steve, my brother, went to Bournemouth University, which you'll know is a good sort of media university. So we got to use some of the kit there in his holidays and stuff, and we made better stuff. And then eventually we put stuff in. I had a day job by this point, but we put stuff in for a BBC talent competition and the sketch writing competition, which got sort of selected. And that year, the best stand-up was Alan Carr won the stand-up award, and Sharon Horgan won the sketch writing. But we were in the finalists, so we got to meet some TV producers and comedy people, which then opened the door. And then we just badgered them to have coffees and to find out how it worked. And we were still doing day jobs at this point. So 2001, we got the first thing on TV, and then I was working in advertising first, not the glamorous end, buying airtime for in between TV shows and stuff, and then I moved back to Oxford so I could do more of that stuff because my brother was still here. But I was using all my holiday up to try and get work in, writing work, and so I cut down and for a couple of years I did 2 days of writing, 3 at Nielsen. Work built up, so I went full time writing. That was in 2007. So and since then we just worked on various TV shows, a lot of entertainment shows. We started off writing for Jimmy Carr on a show called Distraction.
I was just going to ask, who do you write for? What kind of shows, that kind of thing?
Well, so a lot of entertainment shows to start with, a lot of sketch shows. So we wrote on Mitchell and Webb's sketch show. We wrote a sketch called the Blackberry Sketch, which was pretty successful, that Ronnie Corbett did with Harry Enfield. Yeah, so that did us a lot of favours because that sort of went viral. Which, you know, it was like the biggest thing on the BBC's YouTube channel for a long time. But a lot of other people liked that and got us in to write for them as a result. So we worked with Rob Brydon, got us in to write for him on some shows. Ant Deck got us in, so we worked on Takeaway from when it came back, basically to last year. And I did a few years of I'm a Celebrity. I've been out in Australia for 4 years. Oh well, this is the Ant Deck. This is from basically that picture is the that we were filming a thing that they had a running, like there was one year it was Who Shot Simon Cowell and Who Stole the Crown Jewels and stuff, and they got a lot of celebrity cameos in. And that day was like the Thursday or Friday before Oxford played Newcastle and Rafa Benitez when they were still in the Championship. You remember we beat them 3-0 and Eastwood saved the penalty as well. And but I happened to be there and I happened to wear an Oxford scarf, and I said, "Oh, can I get a picture?" So I got that was my half and half Headington United Oxford scarf there. So they were willing to take one, and I think they were all pretty confident that it was going to be an easy game for Newcastle. So that's probably why they're willing to take it. But anyway, I put that up. I said, "Do you mind if I put it up on my Twitter?" And they said, "No, that's fine." And then the Oxford Mail, Mark Edwards, who I've known since primary school, got in touch and said, "Oh, can we put it on the front page of the Oxford Mail?" I said, yeah. And then I went, oh God, I should check. Will they be? Maybe they don't want it on the news, even though Twitter probably reached more people than the Oxford Mail. But so but they were fine with it and everything. So that was it. But I felt bad after Oxford beat them. I felt like, oh, it looks like rubbing it in now. But yes, we've had the old brushes with Newcastle, haven't we, over the years as well?
Yeah. I've got a question for you, actually.
Yeah.
I was thinking about your job, which is fascinating. Is it annoying writing jokes for other people and they get the credit? I mean, that Blackberry sketch, I absolutely love that. And now I'm in awe and I feel a bit nervous speaking to you because it's such an incredible sketch. But yeah, do you get a sense of that? Like, oh, or do you like it? Is it almost like, oh, they're laughing, I wrote that. They're laughing.
Yeah, there's, I mean, look, I think the thing is, one of the early things that happened was there's this brilliant producer called Phil Clark who made, he was the producer of Peep Show and Big Train, which are two of our favourites, and has got, he runs a company called VAL now, who's head of comedy at Channel 4. He was one of the first people that judged our sketches on that BBC talent competition. And fairly early on, he said to us, because we'd acted in some of our sketches, we're not great, well, I'm not a great performer, certainly. And he'd said, look, guys, you can keep making sketches and that's a way, and you can keep doing writer performer thing, or you could just concentrate on the writing and there might be more avenues for that. And we sort of took the subtext pretty quickly of going, all right, well, let's be really good at that rather than try to do something that perhaps we're not as geared up to. And I think actually Steve and Tim are better performers than I am. But in answer to your question, I've gone a roundabout way to it, but what's quite nice is you don't feel you don't have that pressure. Like if you look at the life of stand-ups, I mean, Jimmy Carr's a good example of someone that we've worked on and off with since 2003. he's one of the hardest working people I've ever seen. You know, he's on the Isle of Wight one day, he's in Aberdeen the next, he's in Croatia the next. He's always gigging, he's always working on things. It's not a life I could sustain or would want on the stand-up circuit. And there's a huge amount of pressure. And also, you come in and out of favour. I mean, we've had TV critic reviews where they've absolutely laid into one show we've written on in the first half of the review, and then massively praised another show we've written on in the second half. We sort of get away with that because, you know, we're not people don't know who's behind it, you know. But so I get a great it's enabled us to work with some really a lot of our comedy heroes. I mean, Ronnie Corbett there, for example, and Harry Enfield, and get to write words for people that we never thought we would be able to. And there's something people at that level. It's just like you just sort of we would have never got close to that. So I just love to see the fact that they will take our words. I'll give you a very recent example. We wrote the script for the BAFTAs the week before last, so Sunday just gone. And our job is to write for David Tennant, who's the host, and also we wrote a lot of the little speeches that all the presenters do. And it's a tricky gig because they come in. But one of the bits we got to write, which they only changed a tiny bit, was Jesse Eisenberg and Will Sharp, he'd literally won the BAFTA for Best Original Screenplay for A Real Pain. And then he's back on and he's doing our lines after that. You just go, how's this happened? How is Jesse Eisenberg reading out our lines, and he's selling it as well? And you just go, oh God, there's a whole level of stuff. So there's a real pride in hearing other people. You're just hoping they get the laugh that you want them to. And again, that sort of these performers are just another level that it's just a pleasure to write for them. You know, it's just great to tick people off a list and go, I've written for them.
I'm fanboying a bit, but I love the BAFTAs this year. And
I'm glad.
To my wife that, God, the script writing's really good. There's good gags this year.
Well, it's the second one we've done. We did Richard E. Grant a couple of years ago. We've done a lot of award shows over the years. So we did 4 years of the MTV European Music Awards, which is the weirdest gig because the pairings that you get. So sometimes to be doing for the host, but the host the first year was Justin Timberlake. We weren't right for him. But they go like, here's Cesc Fabregas and will.i.am. Write a line for them to come in, and you just go, what's the connection? You know,
what's the connection?
Well, yeah, and what can they deliver? And or it's like it's some Italian pop star that means something huge there, and then Michael Owen or something, and it's just like, you know, it's a very tricky gig. Very, very few award ceremonies, people come away going, what great links they were. So it's a hard gig, but it is fun. And like we've done the Brits, we did 5 years of the Brits. And like, for example, one of the ones, first year, James Corden did it by himself. Him and Matt Horn and Kylie Minogue had done one that was that they got unfairly a lot of stick for a few years before. But so there was a pressure on, like, you know, he's a great writer anyway, so we're writing with him. But there was a pressure on getting the tone right and getting the jokes right. And also it's about knowing when not to make a joke. And like a great example is, that was the year that Adele had just released her album 21, and she was doing Someone Like You with just a piano in the O2. And I didn't know the album at the time, but James Corden just knew every song off the album. He knew every song off every album that was nominated. You know, you see him on Carpool Karaoke, and he just knows that he can pick up a song really quickly and it stays with him. And you could see that then. And he said, for the link to that one, he said, let's not do a joke. He says, the most beautiful song I've ever heard about heartbreak. Let's just play a serious thing, and then she'll do the song, because the joke's not right there. And he was absolutely right. And so if you watch it back on YouTube, the one that's, I don't know if it's still up, but the one that's got the most hits of her singing, they kept James Corden's intro on, and it's really lovely. And you sort of, no one knew how big that song would be, but by the next year, obviously, it was huge. But those gigs, yeah, Brits, we've done a couple of BAFTAs, some national TV awards. They're brilliant for being around famous names and seeing people. There was one of the MTV awards, I was literally stood next to Jay-Z and Beyonce and Bono having a chat. They're just right next to me, and it's surreal. And you also get to see these people rehearse in a completely empty arena. You know, you're the only people in there seeing them, and it's sort of spoiled going to see music for me, because I've seen Amy Winehouse sing in front of basically nobody, and I've seen Jay-Z perform and Beyonce and Adele and Blur, who are one of my favourites, performing in an empty room, But so it's a weird life being a writer, because you're both at the heart of it for a while, but then also you're sort of miles away from it as well in other ways. But
are you under pressure when you tell people you write comedy? Do you automatically feel pressure to be funny?
Yeah, I've had that, and I do have that sometimes. And I'm aware that people behave a bit differently. I'm mostly not very funny, as my family will tell you. I'm mostly not very funny, and don't try too hard to be funny at home. It's also like I think what sometimes happens is people are some people try to sort of be funny to start with, but I think a lot of people, not a load of people, know exactly what I do at home anyway. Some parents do, some of my kids' friends' parents do and stuff. Some of them don't. But I think after I spent a bit of time with people, it just gets fairly, just I try to be as normal as possible with it. It's there if it's needed, but I think it's sort of it can make people be a bit weird around you at times, but normally that you move on past that.
Question for you: Have you ever snuck any reference to the Mighty Yellows or an Oxford United joke into a script subtly and kind of got away with it?
Do you know, there are Oxford references in scripts that haven't been filmed, because there's a lot of writing that never makes it onto TV. That often, if you need I couldn't think of one example, but if you need to put a punchline to a that's basically a bad city or town, it's Swindon obviously goes in first, and people don't seem to argue with it as well. It's not that it jars or something, but there have been the odd surnames of players that have gone into scripts. If you're just reaching for a surname, those have gone in. I'm not sure that any of those have made it on, but I'm always trying to sneak bits in. Actually, I do. One of my friends is Ian Morris, who wrote The Inbetweeners, and he's just been filming something, and he's a QPR fan. He's just been filming like a romantic comedy called My Oxford Year, and it was all filming in Oxford. So he lives in LA, but he was over here filming. So I met up with him a couple of times, but he sent me a text to say, I've just got an Oxford United reference into the film. So everyone's going to have to watch My Oxford Year. I can't remember where it is coming up, but he sent me a special text. I don't know what it is, but we'll find out. Keep an eye out for that anyway.
Any kind of secret Oxford fans that maybe out there in the showbiz world that we don't know about?
Well, the ones you probably know about anyway. I've worked and know Tom Rosenthal a little bit. I mean, he's part Arsenal fan, part Oxford fan, but obviously because of Jim Rosenthal, he's got that connection. So he's one that I'll talk about Oxford, and he knew because Jim Rosenthal knew a few bits going back a few years. He knew a lot of the goings on behind the scenes, so he was a good one there. The person that I would say I've connected with Oxford a bit is I've known Phil Wang for a long time, since probably 15 years now, since he was a student, in fact, and because he won a lot of student comedy awards. And so when he came to the new theatre, I'd always told him, well, I've got it on my shirt today. I've got my Wang blackout top on. But I told him that his name had been on an Oxford United shirt when I was a kid, and that I'd worn it. And so when he came, he played the Playhouse. I said to him, "Oh, you should borrow an Oxford shirt. See, I'm sure you can get a Wang one. I'll source one if you want it." But he borrowed one from Tom Rosenthal, and he did the whole gig in the yellow Wang shirt.
I love that.
One for the home fans. I'm sure it was up on his Instagram or his Twitter at some point. I'll see if I can find it for you and send it on. But yeah, so I've got a few that are trying to keep an eye on it. The other one, I'm not going to share the photo because it's probably speaking out of school with it. But we worked on a film in lockdown that was a Judd Apatow film called The Bubble, which was sort of the biggest thing we've ever been involved with. I mean, I'll back up a bit. Judd Apatow is obviously, I'm sure, the 40-year-old virgin, and I mean, he's the biggest sort of comedy writer director in America, and he was filming a film in lockdown in England. And the way he works is he has on-set writers, so you're constantly suggesting other lines for the performers, so you've got the script, and we didn't write the script for this film called The Bubble, but it was him and Pam Brady. But he has people there. So on like I think of the 40-year-old virgin, like the on-set writer was Seth Rogen. Okay, so that's the sort of caliber of people he has. He wanted people to do it when he was filming this film, The Bubble, in the UK, and we got onto a short list, and then we didn't think it would happen, but then now we've worked a lot with Peter Serafinovich over the years, and he was cast in it, and he basically put in a good word. When Judd was talking to him about who he was talking about, he just said, "Oh, these guys are great, so you should see them first." And so we got a job basically working on this film. It was in the middle of lockdown. We had to wear masks the whole time, but it had this great cast. Pedro Pascal's in it, Karen Gillan. Do you know Key and Peele? Keegan Michael Key was in it from Key and Peele.
Yeah.
And basically, across the course, he was watching Sunderland Till I Die while we were shooting that, and was getting into lower league football. And I started saying, "Look, okay, you've got to follow Oxford now. We in the playoffs." And at the end of the shoot, there was a few presents exchanged, but I got him. Have you ever seen the East West Coast sketch where they read out the American football players and they've all got ridiculous names? Do you know this sketch? It's one of the funniest things you'll ever see. If you look up East West Bowl,
Look it up.
It's basically they list out all these ridiculous named American footballers. They all pop up and say the names, and one of them is called Hingle McCringleberry, and I got an Oxford shirt printed up with McCringleberry on the back, and Keegan Michael gave it to Keegan Michael Key, and he wore it as well. So we got.
Wow.
I think we're like his second team. But he's really into his sports. But and I have got a photo, but I won't share it because I'm sure he probably doesn't want to. But
I can see the headlines now.
Yeah. I'm trying to slowly convert anyone who hasn't got a team. I'm trying to slowly convert them to be Oxford fans if I can.
Has your I'm going to say showbiz lifestyle, has it ever got in the way of you supporting Oxford? Have you ever missed a really important game because of?
Yeah, a lot. Well, I missed Portsmouth the other day because the BAFTAs. I was listening to it on the car ride in. I had my Sky Sports playing on my phone and it plugged in so I could hear the reporting as I drove into London. So yeah, there's a few Saturday things I've had to do that missed games or Tuesday nights. I mean, I get to I've got a season ticket, so I get to most home games, and I'll get to try 2 or 3 away games a year. But the worst one in recent history was after the playoff final, the bus tour. We were working on I don't know if you're aware of this character that Peter Serafinovich does called Brian Butterfield. He's like this inept businessman, and so we had a tour. We played the Hammersmith Apollo with it last year and everything, but it was in Liverpool the night of the bus tour, so I had to drive up to Liverpool for it, and that's a hometown gig for Peter as well, so it was a big one. But as we were going up, I had Radio Oxford playing through BBC Sounds on the car, and so it was all the commentary of the street parade, and it was absolute torture because it was all Nick Harris saying, "Oh, if you're an Oxford fan, this will be memories for life. You just can't, you'd hate not to miss this. It's an absolute, one of the memories of a lifetime and all this." And I was just listening to it, and they were trying to describe it. I was just going, "Oh, this is the worst thing. I'm driving further and further away from the bus parade." And it was literally, I saw it going past the end of my road when I was watching the Instagram lives later. I was looking back at the Instagrams and going, it's gone past the end of my road. So
here's one for you. Oscar ceremony, you're invited, you're up for a gong. Championship Wembley playoff final. You've got a chance of winning both, Andrew. Which one do you go to?
I'll tell you what. Comedy never gets nominated for the Oscars, so I think it's not a situation I'll have. Which competition is it for Oxford? Champions League. If it's Champions League final.
No, not Champions League. Don't get ahead of yourself, mate.
Okay.
It's the Championship playoff final.
Okay. Yeah, if it's Championship final, no, I'm going to skip. I've seen this get promoted before. That's fine. I'll miss it. I've seen this go up. That's all right. But yeah, it would be difficult. I hate it when the fixtures line up like that and you can see it coming, or you can see certain important fixtures lining up when work or family stuff might be on. But hopefully both things happen, but not at the same day. That's my answer.
Nice.
All right, let's do these last questions kind of quick fire style, because we do want to get this under an hour because podcasts can't go over an hour apparently. So quick fire questions. Imagine we're recording this at the end of the season. So answer these questions like it's May and the season has finished. First question, where have Oxford finished this season?
I mean, look, in general, I don't like doing predictions because you only look stupid, don't you? Or if you're good at them, you should be just betting on things. But I think we'll struggle to. I think the points will slow up. I think we'll finish like one above relegation or two above relegation. I think that's where we'll finish, just because it's such a hard set of fixtures. But then 2 good results in the next couple of weeks, and suddenly that all changes, doesn't it?
Who was the most important player in the running?
Well, I think that's going to depend on. I hope we'll see against Coventry. I hope there's a system. I'd love to see us getting the best out of Tyler Goodrum again, because he was so good in that first part of the season. And if we play a system or we're playing him, I think he could be really influential. It could be, if we're a little bit more outgoing, perhaps, in our playing, a little bit more confident, then I could see him really thriving.
What was the most pivotal result in the run-in?
Of the ones to come, okay.
Yeah.
I think it'll be QPR, which is in early April, I think, which we've got Coventry, which I think is going to be tough on Saturday. And then I think QPR, hopefully they won't have much to play for by then. And if we can get 3 points, then I'm confident we'll get across the line. But yeah, I think that could be a big one. If we lose it, it'll be horrible.
What's the latest update on the stadium in May, the new stadium?
I'm not as across all the stadium stuff as I probably should be, but I mean, is the latest deadline something in June, isn't it, or July, for planning application to go in now, or for a decision? I mean, I think my gut feeling is that we'll end up staying at the Kassam for another couple of seasons, and they'll have to do some. I don't know the details, as I say. I'm not across it as much as I should, but my feeling is if Kassam's going to need to get permission to turn the ground into flats or houses from the council, then he needs to keep the council suite, I imagine, and therefore I think could see us ground share rather than ground sharing. I could see us staying in the Kassam, and just those plans going. But I might be very naive in that. I might, Kassam's always been a businessman, and it might be different. But I would hope we could be. I'd love the stadium to happen, but I just think I don't want us ground sharing. I don't mind the trips to Milton Keynes when we have away trips. I don't want it to be a home trip.
Andrew, we've learned a lot about you as a comedy writer, so we'd like to bring this back full circle and ask the final question. What's been the best bit of information, I guess, we've unearthed or learned about that 1996 super CD single by Oxford United?
Well, I think it's the start. I'd like to find out more. I'd like to dig further. I'd like this to be an ongoing investigation for you now, because I think I did a quick Google before I came on this and saw that Arthur Turner's Lovechild and Beaker had played a gig last month at the Bullingdon. So that's a lead for you there. So I want to know. The main thing I want to know is which players were in that recording studio. I want to know everything about. I want to know. I've done documentaries about Live Aid and who was there, and or Band Aid, and all the recording. I want a full sort of in-depth 3-hour thing about recording that song. And that's your guys' job now. That's your guys' job.
We're on it. Lovely place to finish that, I think. Dan, should we play out with a bit of the song?
Although beware the last 20 seconds, because they haven't dated as well.
Andrew, will you come on again sometime?
Yeah, love to. Yeah. Let's see how things go. But I've got more Oxford stories and stuff. And the other thing I didn't tell you, Matt, is when you were talking about the Barrett boys, it was Andrew and Daniel Barrett.
Love it.
Tea shop. Yeah.
So I wasn't imagining that.
No, I don't. I'm pretty sure, because I grew up in Peachcroft, which is in Abingdon, and Andrew Barrett and Daniel used to play in the park next to me. They were across the park from me. So, and I remember Andrew played for Summertown Stars. So I didn't know him that well, but I played football in the park with him a bit. And so I'm pretty sure it was those two. When you described as the Artful Dodger, it was like it all came flooding back. I was like, that's a very good.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
No, thanks. As I say, I'm happy to talk about Oxford to anyone who listens. So I appreciate being asked as well.
A reminder, if you did play any part in this song in the 1996 recording, do get in touch. We'd love to hear more about it.